Hello, everybody, and welcome to the PHLY Eagles Podcast on a Tuesday afternoon. Bo Wulf, Zach Berman. Lot to talk about. Zach talked to the coordinators today. We're going to talk about Jalen Hurts, the rusher, and how it has looked a little bit different this season than it did last season. We're going to talk to Brian Baldinger about lots of stuff going on with the Eagles. Zach, how are you?
Doing great. Excited for the show.
I can see you're already hitting that posture hard.
Yes, it's a visual medium, right?
How does the back feel? Does it feel uncomfortable to be so upright?
Well, it's like the chicken or the egg, you know?
How so? How is this like the chicken or the egg?
If you do it enough, then you become conditioned to it, and then your back, you won't feel it. So
I don't think that's the chicken and the egg.
It's what causes back pain. Is it standing up straight or not standing up straight enough?
Are you hunched over because you have a bad back,
Yes.
or do you have a bad back because you're always hunched over?
Exactly. That's a more succinct way to put it. But I was not hunched over, I was actually hunched over when the coordinators just spoke that way at the NovaCare complex.
Not that way. Why do you keep getting this wrong?
Sorry about that. That way.
Yes.
That way at the NovaCare complex. When and I was actually leaning forward. When you talk to somebody,
Sheryl Sandberg, you're leaning in.
Yeah, I mean, well, not in that case. When you talk to someone, if you're leaning forward, it shows an interest in what they're saying.
Okay.
Yeah, as opposed to the kind of reclining.
Now, does that mean that it's like going through your mind that I need to show this person that I'm leaning in and interested in what they're saying, or are you actually interested in what they're saying and so you're leaning in?
Well, it's both. If you actually recall, last year at the Super Bowl, Nick Sirianni referenced the fact that I was nodding my head and giving like nonverbal language when he was speaking.
I don't remember that.
Okay. Well, he did.
Not as much of a core memory for me as it is for you.
Point being that when, I very much pay attention to.
Emily, you're not going to believe what Coach Nick said to me today.
First of all, I would never call him Coach Nick. Okay, number one. Okay, and number two, I'm cognizant of nonverbal language. So,
but so you're sticking with the high posture. So you're not then listening to me. You're not interested in what I'm saying. You're just showing the audience.
No, I am, but just the setup of the seat. Like we're not.
That's true.
Sitting
Yeah.
toward
Okay.
each other. Yeah. If we're at.
And how is your back?
My back's great. I mean, yeah.
Okay.
No issue with my back.
Good for you.
Yeah, trying to carry the show.
That's nice. That's good. Played a little softball last night. Fall softball.
How'd you do?
We won. Got the W. But I don't think I've sprinted that much in a while. It's not feeling good the day after.
I'd expect you to do more trotting than sprinting.
Well, we moved to the bigger field, so there's no.
I said trotting in a weird way.
You did say that's okay.
I emphasized the
double T's.
Yes,
yeah.
Exactly.
Bigger field. Home runs are not in play on this field. It's
not at all.
It's a baseball field. Yeah, the fences are too far back with wood bats.
I mean, make excuses, right?
No, I mean it would be like you'd have to hit the ball. You'd have to hit a softball like 400 feet.
Yeah. Even you can't do that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Maybe where there's a will, there's a way. Anyway, Zach, let's get into the big topic of the day, the Jalen Hurts thing. Do you at least agree on the face?
Well, let's clarify what the Jalen Hurts thing is.
Well, I said in the beginning, Jalen Hurts as a rusher.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
We're the topic. Okay. We're not talking about his thing. I think they understand that. Do you agree just visually? Aesthetically, it looks different from Jalen Hurts as a runner this season than it did last season.
I actually don't.
Really?
I know people are saying that. I think the way the runs are finishing, I've heard he looks slower. I haven't seen that he looks slower. I haven't seen him in the open field as frequently. But actually, one of the things that I've always found with Jalen Hurts as a rusher is that he's in control of himself when he runs. We've actually pointed out in the past the way he points when he runs, right? If you're in an all-out sprint, it's hard to point. He's often a controlled runner. What we haven't seen is Jalen Hurts in the open field as much. When he had that 24-yard run against Washington on Sunday.
Which was the first time, I think, this season that he's looked dynamic as a runner.
And it was the first time he was in the open field. So now, to get to the top of the show, it's the chicken or the egg here. Is he not in the open field because he hasn't been as dynamic of a runner, or is he you need to be in the open field to be a dynamic runner. I do agree that he's more cognizant about getting down. You asked Nick Sirianni the question yesterday, and we'll get to that. But I think the way he finishes runs might be more pronounced than the way he runs.
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt that he is giving himself up more in the open field, not running out of bounds, than he did any time that I've seen him before. There's a lot of those like scrambles where he just sort of plops down on his back after like 2 yards downfield.
Yeah.
So I asked Nick Sirianni what he thought about, what's the reason for that. And he said he needs to protect himself. He took the big hit against New England, and it's always been our intention to make sure he's protecting himself as a runner. We encourage him to slide, and we encourage him to get down, and we encourage him to not take a big hit. Step out of bounds when you can. Do we want all of our guys stepping out of bounds? No. We want other guys most of the time, if it's not a 2-minute drill, to keep the ball in their outside arm, use their stiff arm, play a little pound on the sideline. I don't want Jalen doing that. Do I want Jalen taking big hits? I'm not. And I think he's got a great feel of, okay, I'm not going to make him miss. Okay, I'll go down in this particular case. Yada, yada, yada. Every run play that we have in for him or any read play is done with the utmost thinking about him all the time to make sure we keep him safe. If we're thinking about that constantly, we want him thinking about that as well because we know how important it is to have him out on the field every game. So that makes sense to me. You and I have been disagreeing in the past about Jalen Hurts' value as a runner, and I have made the case that I think you've given him this money. He's the quarterback. They do need to protect him a little bit more. He has gotten injured each of the past 2 seasons. You have said that that's not the case. Like, don't take away what makes him special.
Yes.
As Nick Sirianni said in the spring, we're not paying him more to do less. Mm-hmm. As Jalen Hurts said in training camp, he's trying to embrace the uniqueness of his game. It doesn't seem like that's the way that things are going so far. But you don't think there's too much of a difference? And what did Brian Johnson say today?
Yeah, Brian Johnson said that he's always trying to protect himself, right? That's something that they reinforce. But part of what makes Jalen special is his ability to run, and that's going to be a part of his game. But it's up to the coaching staff to protect him. So that's similar to what Nick Sirianni said, probably in a more succinct way. Jalen hasn't been as effective of a runner this year as he was last year because I think of the way he's finishing runs and because he hasn't had those explosive runs. But I thought on that 24-yard run, like you said, he looked like Jalen from last year. I don't think he's like a different runner this year. I don't think he's slower. I don't think his
I think he is.
You think he's actually slower? He
looks different to me. And I don't, I don't have the GPS tracking. I would be very interested to know what that stuff says. That big run against Washington on Sunday, it looked like the only time this season in which he was sort of playing he was running without thinking. He was just reacting. Mm-hmm. Whereas all these other ones, and I don't know if it's an injury thing or if it's just this is what he's being told to do, but like it doesn't seem like he is going all out.
The results are the results. He hasn't been as effective as a runner, which is like it's something that really surprises me because the consistent thing throughout his career in college for 3 seasons as a starter, he didn't start his junior year, but 3 seasons as a starter he was a prolific runner. Like Oklahoma, prolific runner. Those first 2 years at Alabama, prolific runner. We saw him his first start with the Eagles against New Orleans, over 100 yards rushing. Last year, he was so dynamic in the open field. He hasn't gotten in the open field. Now, what you wonder is I do think he's trying to stay healthy. That probably has been a point of discussion. I think that part of it might be the way defenses are playing him. I think teams are cognizant of him as a runner. But
I think the play calling has changed a little bit too. In week 1, we saw a few more of those called draws, and then obviously he had that really bad fumble at the end of that game. It feels like since then we haven't seen as much of that.
Yeah, but I think actually when he's best as a runner is when a play's off script and he extends it, and he hasn't been doing that as frequently. I think he's been pretty quick to.
I'm not sure. I don't know. I feel like he's best sometimes in the past is when they're calling those draws. And when they're leaning into that, as you have described him in the past as their short yardage running back.
True. Now these are different ways of running. I'm talking about getting him in the open field.
Yeah,
he's in the open field more on those rollouts. The play breaks down. It's him against a defensive back, or he's out running a linebacker. That's where I think Jalen it gets those big chunk plays on the ground. I think about now the Minnesota run last year along the right sideline. Was that a designed one, or was that just a rollout that he took? I would have to go back.
I think that was a scramble. I think
scramble,
right, yeah.
So it stands the reason that a scramble would allow for more, kind of an impromptu situation. The defense certainly isn't expecting it there. So I think there still is a small sample size now. You can't look at the volume of carries. He has 40 carries this year. But that
we have sort of the side by side, which we can pull up from over the last year and this year. And so if you take a look at it, he's rushing about the same amount per game. Now, obviously, a lot of these are the sneaks.
That's
right?
what I was about to say. Yep, exactly.
So last year, 11 rushes a game. This year, 10 rushes a game. Last year, over 50 yards rushing a game. This year, just 33.5. But if you go deeper to like the success rate stuff and the EPA stuff, that's where you really see that there has been a difference. So last year, in terms of success rate as a ball carrier among quarterbacks, he was 8th at 55.2%. This year, he's down to 18th at 47.5%. Not a huge drop off. Scramble success rate, this is really, I think, one of the big differences. And this speaks to that he is not as dynamic as a scrambler this year. Last year, a 60% success rate as a scrambler. This year, just a third of the time, 33.3. That's 30th in the league. Last year, he was number 1 among all quarterbacks in rush EPA per game. This year, he's down to 8th. Last year, in scramble EPA per game, he was 3rd. This year, he's down to 16th. And then it also shows you there that they are not necessarily calling fewer design runs. Last year was 18%. This year it's 15.5%, both second in the league. And those are, I think that is where the sneaks come in, because he's had to sneak a little bit more early this season than I think we've seen in the past. So that does tell you that it's only a 4-game sample, but especially as a scrambler, he is not as dynamic right now as he was last year.
And that gets back to what I was saying, is that he hasn't had those open field scrambles as
But
frequently.
I think that has to then be, whether it's the chicken or the egg, the reason he hasn't had those open field scrambles is because he's not as dynamic.
Well, I think he's giving himself up quicker, number one.
Okay.
He's not trying to break tackles or make people miss the way he did last year.
And so let me ask you this.
Wait, and then the second thing is I do think part of it's the structure of the defense, the structure of defenses he's playing as well.
I don't know if I agree about the structure of the defense. I think teams were keyed in on him as a runner last year. I don't know that has changed very much.
I think teams are dropping more people into coverage.
Yeah, that's true.
So if you drop more people into coverage, then kind of in theory that would limit your big playability in terms of scrambling.
So let me ask you this: if we accept the premise that he is giving himself up more than he was last year, I can think of 3 explanations for that. One is there's an injury. 2 is it's his decision that he wants to be conscious of his body. 3 is it's an organizational emphasis that they are drilling into him that they want him to stay healthy. Which do you think is the likeliest of those 3?
2 and 3.
Okay.
I don't think he's injured. Do you think he's injured?
Well, I think he's probably injured, like all football players are injured, but I don't. It would be impossible for me to say what's going on with his body.
I don't think he's a slower person than he is this year compared to last year. I don't think all of a sudden he came back this offseason and lost a tangible.
Well, I agree. It's unlikely that he is physically diminishing versus last year, which is why an injury would make sense to me. But
I think 2 and 3.
Because I don't think that he looks the exact same.
No, I think it's in his head to get down, as you brought up, to Nick Sirianni, give himself up.
Yeah.
Number one. And it's probably something that is important to him. And it's probably something that's important to the organization. And I do think that...
But it also doesn't necessarily track with the way that he is wired, right, on the field. So, which is why it sort of looks like he's thinking through it, because he has to reinforce to himself the bigger picture.
Do you think there's anything here a shout out to our Denver staff that's in the office, like Jokic, during the regular season, it's like, I'm going to turn this on in the postseason, that he knows it's going to be about February and January, and that he can pull out some of these runs in January and in February. Right now, beat teams with his arms, take what's there, but don't try to do more. I mean, when I keep referencing that Minnesota game last year what jumped out to me about that Minnesota game is he invited like contact. He could have gone out of bounds,
right,
and he cut back in, right? He invited that risk, and there was a great reward on the play. I don't know if he makes that same decision this year.
And I think that's what's interesting, is that this is definitely a different style of play from him.
Yes.
And so what is the reason for that? I guess it's hard to parse.
I would still do the full Jalen Hurts experience. But I also understand.
What do you mean?
Like, if I was coaching that team or I was in the organization.
Oh, I see.
I would say
you
play
would
the
invite
way,
him to, yeah, okay.
Play the way that got you that contract. Play the way that, like, be you out there, okay? Don't have in your, don't take a big hit from, when a player's coming at you. But lean into what works. As Andy Reid used to say, let your personality show. On the field, let your skill set show. I've been consistent with that since the summer. I thought, as Nick Sirianni said, you don't pay a guy more to do less. But you do want him, and Brian Johnson said this, you want him there the whole season, right? You want him to show up every Sunday. I would just say he's a special runner. Don't take away what makes someone special.
Yeah, I sort of feel like a little bit hypocritical about this, because I've been saying he needs to protect himself more. I want him to do that. And watching this happen over the course of the season, it's a little bit like, oh, this isn't as fun. And
are you willing to say Zach's right?
No, because I think this is the right thing to do.
You would never say Zach's right.
Of course I would. Yeah. But I don't. I think this is it's like a marshmallow test thing, right? Like,
what's a marshmallow test?
Can you delay gratification? Like, are you willing to?
Can you explain the marshmallow? This sounds interesting to me. What's the?
You've
marshmallow
never heard
test?
of the marshmallow test?
No, I have not.
You put a marshmallow in front of a kid, and you say, if you can sit here and not eat the marshmallow, you'll get 2 marshmallows.
Okay.
And so can they be patient in service of the greater reward? Okay. And oftentimes not. This is like it's like, are you willing to?
I mean, a chocolate chip cookie would be more apt. Do you eat just like a plain
No, because that's not the test, Zach. That's not, this is a thing that happened. This is a famous thing. Just because you like chocolate chip cookies doesn't mean I can reference what you want.
No, I'm saying I'm trying to think about the test itself. How often do you just eat a plain marshmallow?
Kids like marshmallows. What do you want me to do? I'm sorry, I didn't design the test.
It just seems to be an ineffective test.
No, it's a psychological thing. It's not about which dessert do you like better.
I just think a chocolate chip cookie would be more tempting than a marshmallow.
You know what? We'll set up the Pizookie test for you for your birthday.
That would be hard for me. Yeah, to resist the Pizookie.
But I think there is like objectively, it would be better if that was the case, that they feel like they can make it to the playoffs, and when they get to the playoffs, Jalen Hurts can be his full self, like we saw him be on that one scramble against Washington. That's like, I don't really believe that they're parsing it down to that level, because you can't count on that in the NFL. I just think there's no doubt that his style of play is a little bit different this year, and I think it's very interesting.
I just think history has been unkind to changing the way quarterbacks play. And I'm not saying they're changing the way Jalen's played, but I look at the Carson Wentz experience here. I look at Robert Griffin III. Now, part of those could have been but don't you think by injury, of course. Yeah,
but those are such interesting examples for you to choose, because don't you think what the problem with those guys is that they got really injured and then their bodies became broken?
Well, that factored into it, but I think what made those guys special was the way they played too, right? Like Carson Wentz's his ability to do things off schedule, and when you try to confine him to the pocket, he wasn't the same quarterback.
But the lesson from those guys is that the way that they played was unsustainable.
You think that's the lesson, that it was unsustainable? Yeah.
Because they both broke their bodies.
Yeah. Now, in the case of Robert Griffin III, he played in a postseason game he shouldn't have played in, right? If he had normal time to recover there, it might be a different story. But because
he had injured himself playing that way.
No, he further injured himself, and then that changed it. Like, he rushed back. Yeah. So I personally think that in Jalen Hurts' case, he can be smart. I think there's a compromise between being smart, okay, and and like restricting or inhibiting what you do well.
Okay.
And I don't think he's restricting what he does well. He has 40 carries this season. They're still doing quarterback sneaks, right?
Yeah, I do wonder what percent. We should have looked at this, but I wonder what
Yeah.
percentage of those are sneaks. It's pretty high, I would imagine.
But I think that part of what makes him special is that ability to run.
Yeah, I mean, I think we should look at it because I think he's probably had like 4 carries over like 5 yards. Maybe that's probably a little bit low, but
Yeah, his longs in each game are he had a 14-yarder against New England, an 8-yarder against Minnesota, an 8-yarder against Tampa Bay, and then the 24-yarder against
so 2 runs over 10 yards, I think.
Yeah, which is like not what we're used to seeing from Jalen Hurts. That's correct.
Yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. I don't know.
What's interesting?
No, it feels like you don't think that he looks different, but you do think that they should play him differently.
Okay, I'm going to explain this the way I did at the top, okay? I think that he's reacting to runs differently. I don't think he's finishing runs the way he did before. I think he's quick to get down, as you pointed out to Nick Sirianni. Right. I think there is an emphasis on his part, or I'm projecting here, speculating that there's an emphasis from his part and an emphasis on the organization's part not to take big hits, not to expose himself to danger. And I think the organization's saying he can still run without, it's like be 70% or 80% of what you do. But I think inherently when you're running and you're so focused on not getting hit, then you're going to be quick to get down, right? So I think part of what makes his ability to run special is making people miss, is his vision in the open field, and I don't think he's taking advantage of that enough. That's
the other variable that I think is just worth talking about is they have a better running back right now than they did last year. And so if DeAndre Swift can take a little bit more of the load and the threat of Jalen Hurts as a runner is still affecting defenses, that is one of those like investments that you would take. Like you give a little bit more to DeAndre Swift so that Jalen Hurts can be better for later in the season.
Yeah. And again, I think it has been a limited sample size here. I thought that the 24-yard run showed promise last week. I'd be real curious about revisiting this conversation during the bye week, okay, which is in like 6 weeks right now or thereabouts, and see if it looks similar, if things evolve, if things change.
Okay.
If you had to gamble on that, where would you go?
Good one.
That was a no-sell there.
Well, I'll do my own transitions. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Because this is the start of the playoffs, Zach. Who you got tonight?
I mean, come on. I want a good show tonight, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I have the Phillies.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, things are heating up at the ballpark. We are headed to the playoffs, and with DraftKings Sportsbook, you won't miss a moment of the baseball action. New customers can score $200 instantly in bonus bets for betting just $5 on baseball. Plus, all customers can take a crack at a sweet payday with DraftKings same-game parlays. String together multiple bets from a single game for your shot at a major payout. So what are you waiting for? Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use code PHLY. New customers can score $200 instantly in bonus bets for betting just $5 on baseball only on DraftKings Sportsbook with code PHLY. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.1800gambler.net. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas, licensee partner Golden Nugget, Lake Charles in Louisiana, 21 plus, age varies by jurisdiction, void in Ontario. See dkng.com/baseball for eligibility, terms, and responsible gaming resources. Bonus bets expire 7 days after issuance. Eligibility and deposit restrictions apply. Before we get to Baldy, Zach, anything else from the coordinators that you thought was worth passing along?
So a few things. We spoke yesterday about some game situation type stuff. Brian Johnson had a chance to address. We spoke to Brian Johnson today. He said that the goal on the pass to A.J. Brown, the second touchdown, was just to get a first down. He was like, it wasn't a pass play. It was a pass play to get a first down. It worked to get a touchdown. Right? So it was, 2nd and 4 there?
Was he asked about whether that was a check then?
He said it was a design pass play to get a first down.
Okay.
He said it was a design pass to get a first down. So maybe the
But that route is not a first down route.
No, that's the thing.
Route,
so I think that might have been the two of them.
Okay, they adjusted the route there.
Yes. Now, I asked him, I just wanted to give him a chance on the record for the 3rd and 11 play. And he said, when I say that 3rd and 11 play, of course, if you're watching now, you probably know
sweep,
the Kenny Gainwell run.
Yes.
He said there's different schools of thought there. That in that case, you can either bust one loose for a touchdown, or you can pick up some yards to get to go for it on 4th down. And he said it didn't work. He takes responsibility.
I mean, an 11-yard run for Kenny Gainwell would be like one of the longest of his career.
I think Sirianni said on WIP this morning that that it was his decision that Johnson wanted to pass and that he wanted to run. In any event, it was. Well,
what does that say for Brian Johnson's play calling power?
I mean, I
imagine that's just Sirianni trying to take one. But
exactly. Yeah, I think that. Now there is discussion there, but he is the head coach. I mean he can overrule, right? In that case, in any event, it was a bad play, and it did not work. Sean Desai spoke about the blitzing, but it was kind of a generic answer that varies on a game-to-game on a game-to-game basis. The James Bradbury thing in the slot, they're still figuring out. He said that was the most work Bradbury's done, and they do need to balance what's best for the team and what's best for James Bradbury, who was a 2nd-team All-Pro last year as an outside corner. And Desai acknowledged that this is the most Bradbury's ever played there, right? So I'm curious to see. I asked about Sidney Brown when Sidney Brown gets back, how they deploy it, because there's kind of these two alternative tracks here. You know you don't have your slot cornerback for the rest of the year, right? Avonte Maddox is out for an extended period. So you can say to Sidney Brown, right, you might be our best option here. This is the role for you to contribute right now, okay? But also Sidney Brown's someone you're thinking from a developmental perspective is a potential answer for at safety, a high 3rd-round pick. Right? And so you don't want to stunt his development curve at safety. Perhaps you think it can complement it. That's why I'm curious to see how they allocate that time. I'm curious to see whether they go out and they address slot cornerback on the trade market or something of that nature. I said last week's show I thought safety was a spot they would look. I still think that's the spot they might look on the trade market. But I can see them going after slot corner so they don't have to stunt Sidney Brown's development. And if they do, then I think they would clearly look at safety and say, and I actually don't want to say it would stunt his development, but what it would do is it would make him focus on the slot for this year, similar to what they did with Avonte Maddox at safety for that one season.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to getting into that. The trade candidate conversation. Maybe we'll do a trade deadline quackatology next week.
Okay. The deadline's usually around Halloween because I remember a few things. First off, I remember they acquired Golden Tate, I believe, on October 30th. Okay,
Jeff McClain and I were in Paris together.
Yes. Underdogs came out that day.
Really?
Yes.
Oh.
Well, the day of the press conference.
Congratulations. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you. That was a good day. A fun day. The whole media tour. Yeah, it was nice. And then
what was your favorite interview to give as the author?
I'll tell you actually. Molly Sullivan, the former Sixers sideline reporter, she moderated a Q&A with me out in, I think it was Bethlehem or Harrisburg. I think it was Harrisburg.
Okay.
At a bookshop in Harrisburg.
You're going to have some very angry people living in Bethlehem and Allentown thinking that you confused it for Harrisburg.
It was. I so appreciate them having me. It was a great time. And it was actually the day of Matt Gelb's wedding. So
really?
Yeah, I remember that.
So you did both. You pulled the double.
Yeah, and then Jay Ajayi, that trade happened on the 31st.
Okay. Well, good news is we have somebody much more interesting to talk to. That's no shade. Brian Baldinger. Baldy, how you doing? Can you hear us? Sorry, we couldn't hear you.
Oh, yeah, I hear you fine.
Good. We wanted to check in with you just to start on this topic that we've been discussing for the first half of the show here. Do you notice a difference, Baldy, in Jalen Hurts as a runner this season versus last year, and what do you sort of attribute that to?
I don't know. Is he healthy? It doesn't look like he can turn the corner right now.
Speaking my language.
Yeah. No, it's pretty evident at this point. Guys are flattening him to the sideline right now. He's not trying to turn the corner. So, he's had ankle issues in the past. I don't know. I'm not over there. I'm not reading injury reports or anything else, but I do know Jalen, and I know that, when he can get 15 yards instead of getting 2, he's going to turn the corner and get 15 yards. So it's quite evident at this point. He's averaging a pedestrian 3.5 yards a carry right now, whether it's a scramble or run. And so there's something there. They're not going to say it. He's not going to say anything. We might not know until after the season. But I think there's something underlying in what you just asked, Bo.
How much do you think that changes sort of the upside of the offense?
Well, I don't think that they're dialing up as many quarterback runs as they did last year. Like, I still remember week 1 last year against Detroit. He ran it 17 times.
Yeah.
Like, we're not going to see anything like that. We'll see some brotherly shoves maybe, and maybe, just a read option or two to keep the defense honest. But I don't think, especially the way Swifty's running, I don't think it's a real need right now to dial up a lot of Jalen Hurts' runs. But they're certainly more difficult to defend if you're really thinking about him as, a great runner in this business.
It seems the two of you are on the same wavelength with the Jalen Hurts.
That's right. We texted ahead of time.
Another big change, Baldy, between this year and last year is Dallas Goedert's production. I understand it's 4 games, but it's clearly not the same as what we saw a year ago. What's the film showing you about Goddard?
Well, it's a little bit, Zach, like sometimes I do a lot of shows in San Francisco. They'll say the same thing about Kittle. And then, all of a sudden Kittle will just pop, and have an unproductive 4 weeks. And you're like, is he part of the offense? Is he just blocking? Like, I think Goddard's going to be a part of the offense. Like, they've been a good red zone team to begin with, but they've been a good red zone running team. And so that's not going to involve your tight end. That's kind of where you need your tight end, in the red zone. So there's going to be opportunities for Dallas. I don't think anybody over there at NovaCare, including the quarterback and the coach, thinks for a second that Dallas Goedert isn't an elite player. It's just a question of, all right, they've made concerted efforts, and it's clear they're going to get the ball to A.J. Brown to start these games. They've done it the last 2 weeks. I don't think that's going to change, for whatever reason. Like last week, okay, Emmanuel Forbes, is as big as A.J.'s leg, like, let's go after him. So that was a matchup thing, and they exploited it. And, I would do the same thing. And I like Emmanuel Forbes, but I like A.J. Brown better in that matchup. And so, it's going to change week to week. We'll see, against the Rams this week, if Dallas Goedert's going to be a bigger part of it.
Getting some questions in the comments that are what I was going to ask you as well, Baldy. And as someone who has been a starting right guard for the Eagles, now that Sua Opeta is ready to take that mantle with Cam Jurgens out for a little bit of time, what did you make of Sua's performance, and what are sort of his strengths and weaknesses?
Well, first of all, he played really, really well. He's been in the system. He's been to Stoutland University. He's got his degree right there. I think, Zach, you know better, but this might be his 4th year now. He's been in the system a long time, and he's played a number of positions. I got a text from the right tackle after the game, and he thought he played great. So, that's one guy, and that guy matters a lot in this business.
I would say so.
And what he says. But I think he played really well. I think, he's always had tremendous power. He played left tackle in college. He played guard. He's got good power. He's got good size. And so, they could throw Jack Driscoll in there. They have options. They could put the rookie in there, Tyler Steen, but they're going with Sua. And I think a lot of it is, the guy's been around a long time. I think he's got a good head on his shoulders. But I think ultimately the guy's got good power. He moves bodies. He moves big bodies. And he did against a good front the other day.
In speaking about Sua, in December of 2017, December 2018. The Eagles played the Rams both those years, and I would have to write the story, what's their plan for Aaron Donald? And I would go over to Brandon Brooks' locker and Jason Kelsey's locker and Stefan Wisniewski's locker, and like I would ask them, and they would look at me like, do you think there's a plan for Aaron Donald? I mean, what's it like? Well, I guess, what do you think it's like blocking Aaron Donald, and what will the Eagles do this weekend against him?
Well, hopefully they're burning a lot of midnight oil, this week here, Zach, and getting ready for him. Because literally, if you watch them last week against Indianapolis, like they were dysfunctional the entire first half. I think it was 21-0 at the half. Like literally, Aaron Donald ruined every drive, and it wasn't just sacks. It was everything. I mean, Anthony Richardson couldn't wait to get out of the pocket and get away from him. But to me, it's like, look, I'd love to watch Landon Dickerson and Aaron Donald in the phone booth go at it, but it's never like that. He's going to line up all over the place. He goes where he can win. It's like trying to trap water. Like he's going to find the crack, and he's going to exploit it. And he's playing at a really high level right now. To me, it's always a group effort, Zach. Like your eyes always have to be on him. You always got to put a body on him and another body. And, any back that's in any sort of a blitz pickup mode, like you got to keep your eyes on 99. And so to me, it's always a group effort. You can do some things formation-wise, Zach, where you go, okay, let's keep them on this side and let's run this side. Let's keep them on this side where we're sliding to them, and we'll also keep the back maybe over there if we have to, and we'll hold up here against Byron Young and some of Matt Hecht and some of these new guys that nobody knows anything about. And we'll take our chances there. So I always think it's a team effort.
As much as it's a team effort, like you said, they'll try to get him on the most favorable matchup. Do you think Sua Opeta is kind of in the spotlight this week, knowing that he's the reserve O lineman there?
Oh, I think Aaron Donald is about as smart as they come. So I think just knowing Aaron a little bit, he wants Sua Opeta to feel his punch. So yeah, Zach, I think he's going to be over there, and maybe more than he would based on formations or anything else. Like I'm sure he wants to test him and just see, what his feet are like. Does he overset? Like he's studying him real hard right now. Like knowing Aaron, like he went back and watched preseason games and any other game he's been in. He's pulling out the tape and he's just studying. Is he stiff? Can he move? Can he bend? Like he's looking at any weakness he can find in him right now.
And it's funny because you referenced those past games. The Eagles have done a pretty good job against Aaron Donald in the past, so you almost worry that like he's due for a vintage performance.
They also had Brandon Brooks then, too.
They had Brandon Brooks then, exactly. Now, I think if you look at like the defensive tackles over the past decade, Fletcher Cox is probably in conversation for number 2 behind Aaron Donald over that time frame. It feels like through 4 games we're getting sort of a vintage Fletcher Cox performance, Baldy. He looks better, I think, than he has the past couple of years. Do you agree, one? And what do you sort of attribute that to? And maybe does like Jalen Carter's presence get a little bit of the credit for that?
That's a great question, Bo. And honestly, I announced the game for national radio on Sunday. And so I was talking to Fletcher, and I said, are you just going to play forever? Like he honestly, like you guys have seen him for 12 years. He looks exactly the same as the day they drafted him out of Mississippi State. Like he's got the exact same approach. You can always grab Fletcher for any reason, for any cause, like 10 minutes before kickoff or in the off. Like he's just a great person. But I think that the rotation has been really good. Like they've got a 5-tackle defensive rotation right now, obviously with Jordan and Jalen and Marlon. Like they've got a good rotation. So they're not killing him right now. And I think the young guys, like he's enjoyed working with Jalen. He's enjoyed working with Jordan because like they want to be good. So I think like he's actually mentoring some young guys that have a real upside. And he's playing at a high level. There's no doubt about it. And so I asked him if he's going to play till he's 40. He goes, no, I'll be back I'll be back bass fishing or whatever he said he was going to do. But, he looks fresh. And, one thing about Fletch, like I don't, knock on wood, like he really has escaped any major injuries, surgeries, injuries. So, he can take care of himself. He always has kept his weight down. It's never, ever gotten out of hand. And so, look, I mean, he's the ultimate pro in this business. And I think it's helped that these young guys kind of look up to him the way they do.
in staying with the defense, I look at that slot cornerback spot, and in one sense, James Bradbury could be their best option just in terms of talent, but he was a second-team All-Pro on the outside last year. The Eagles need to figure out what to do the rest of the year. How do you see them navigating that? Would you keep Bradbury in there, or would you try to find an alternative?
It's a great question, Zach, because I was actually, I saw it during the game, and you could tell that he's not comfortable in that role, or at least not as comfortable as he would be at right corner, where he just knows the adjustments, he knows the routes, he knows Terry McLaurin. Like in there, that's a whole different animal. You got to be a lot more physical. You got to be a bigger part of the run game. Avonte Maddox was a pit bull. And although he was a little undersized, he was a pit bull, and so he loved that. He was built for that position. I don't see the Eagles having that guy right now, and maybe that's their best bet. But then you got to live with Job on the outside, and he's going to get picked on. This Puka Nacua is like nothing else we've seen. He plays everywhere. So Bradbury will get him inside. Job will get him outside. Slade will get him. Like everybody's going to get him. And I've not seen a quarterback. I'm not here to give the scout report on the Rams right now. You're asking me about the slot corner, Zach. But I haven't seen a quarterback in this league fall in love with a rookie receiver the way Matt Stafford's fallen in love with Puka.
Interesting. I'm looking forward to get that. If we just sort of dive into that a little bit, Baldy. What makes that Sean McVay offense so difficult for Sean Desai this week?
Well, he's already before, I think even before Cooper Kupp got hurt, because he's basically Cooper Kupp in this offense right now. So he lines up everywhere. He's in motion. He's in the slot. He's in the backfield. Like he's blocking at the point of attack. Like he's everywhere. So it's hard to gauge where he's going to be. But he has this unbelievable feel that if it's zone defense, he knows exactly where the softest spot in the zone is. And if he's in man coverage, he's not the fastest guy. That's probably why he was, a fifth-round pick, whatever. But he has that rare ability just to separate, And Stafford, I don't care if it's red zone, third down, whatever it is, he's looking for him. And they've done a good job of protecting him. You watch this Rams team now, like they've been every single game. They could have beaten the 49ers. They took Seattle apart. Like they've been very, very competitive, and the offensive line is the key right now. I think they've gone a long ways to trying to fix it, especially the left guard Steve Avila right now.
I was about to ask you that. Outside of preparing for Aaron Donald, what do you think is keeping this coaching staff up right now in preparing for the Rams?
Well, I texted somebody in the business this morning saying, does any? What Brock, Purdy's doing in San Francisco. I don't know if anybody's throwing the ball better than Stafford. He's throwing it great. I know the numbers don't say that, but he's throwing to Tutu Atwell and Puka Nacua, like guys he's never thrown to before. So there's some of that, and they've had to juggle. They just picked up a right guard off the scrap heap in Pittsburgh. He's playing right guard. They lost their left tackle. They took the right guard, put him at left tackle. So they're juggling up front. But, this Kyron Williams, they traded, Cam Akers away. This Kyron Williams looks pretty good. Ran for over 100 yards last week against a good Indianapolis front. He looks like the real deal to me. That chump, you don't just win Super Bowls by accident. I mean, the guy's a great coach. And so they're maximizing their talent on offense right now. And defensively, Zach, challenge any reporter or any analyst this week to tell you all 11 starters on defense. Nobody can do it, all right? Because nobody's heard of some of these guys. But yet they play really, really hard.
Baldy, where are you headed to this weekend?
I'm going to go up and see if the New England Patriots or the New Orleans Saints have a quarterback. It's like the quarterback derby's going on because neither team's quarterback play has been worth a darn so far. But that's the game I'm doing this weekend.
I like that. We'll enjoy. Good luck. Probably tough quarterback play that you'll be watching, but hopefully you have a good time. And thank you for joining us and giving us the insight again. We look forward to talking to you next week.
Look forward to it, guys. You bet, man. Take care.
Thank you, Baldy. And, if you wanted to go watch Baldy work and cover that game, but you weren't decided whether you were going to have time, you could use GameTime to get a ticket. because buying tickets to your favorite events should not be stressful. GameTime is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater near you. With killer deals on last-minute tickets and their best price guarantee, you can stop stressing over the tickets and start getting hyped for the fun you'll have. They've got flash deals and last-minute tickets. They've got easy-to-find and buy tickets for every kind of event in your area, images of seat views, lowest price guarantee, event cancellation protection, job loss protection, and more. It is the fastest growing ticketing app in the country for a reason. Get images of your seat before you buy, so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. Buy tickets in a matter of seconds. 2 taps and you're set. Plus, the tickets are sent directly to your phone, so you never have to dig through your email. Snag the tickets without the stress with GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use code PHLY for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code PHLY for $20 off. Download GameTime today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed.
To Baldy's point, by the way, I take pride in knowing personnel with every team in this league, right? Knowing rosters, knowing depth charts. Can give you like the 30-second bio on most of these guys from all our draft work that we do. Mm-hmm. Russ Yeast, you would have stumped me on.
Russ Yeast, yes. Good baker.
Yes. Russ Yeast, who is a starting safety for the Rams, has started all 4 games, was a 7th-round pick last year.
Out of?
Well, I looked it up, but out of Kansas State via Louisville.
Okay.
But, yeah, Russ Yeast was someone who, if we were doing our draft, which we're going to do Thursday.
Some people call him a bit of a riser.
I see what you did there. Look at that. You see, I sell your jokes better than you sell mine.
Well, they're funnier.
Yeah. You can do the yeast test at Stanford University, right?
There you go.
But yeah, this Rams defense does have some personnel that might be new to the casual fan. Most of these guys you would probably know. Bobby Brown, of course, Texas A&M, Aaron Donald,
Pittsburgh.
Yeah. Is it Michael Hoecht? Hoecht?
I actually don't know.
Yeah, he's an edge rusher for them. They have Ernest Jones in the middle, who was a high draft pick for them, a 3rd rounder. They have Christian Roseboom. They have Byron Young, who, of course, was mentioned by Baldy. And the thing that I like about Byron Young is there were 2 Byron Youngs in the draft this year. So there's the Alabama one and the Tennessee one. There's Witherspoon, who we dissected during free agency 2 years ago quite a bit. He was in the bracketology. Jordan Fuller, who I always like to watch. Then there is Darian Kendrick, who I remember at Clemson fairly well, and Kobe Durant, who was a 4th-round pick in 2022.
Now, we do owe an apology for forgetting Mac Hollins at the end of yesterday's
Yeah, that was my bad. How can I forget Mac Hollins?
North Carolina, they drafted the guy. Now, I do think that we were right that Zach Brown was more recent, but we did forget about Mac Hollins.
Yes, and I said that they hadn't drafted anyone, and they clearly drafted Mac Hollins in the 4th round. And they liked him so much, they hired his college position coach, your man. Gunter Brewer. Yeah,
what a career Mac Hollins has carved out for himself.
Yeah, although he wouldn't shake Desmond Ritter's hand the other day. Did you see that?
No, I didn't see that.
Yeah, he was pretty pissed off at Desmond Ridder.
What happened?
Desmond Ridder came to the sideline trying to pump everyone up, and Mac Hollins wasn't having it.
Good for Mac Hollins. Desmond Ritter's not very good.
I mean, he's signed there. Cincy, if you remember that.
Did you? You know who I liked? My favorite running back in that draft, Kyren Williams. That's my guy.
Look at that. You nailed that one. I like Kyren Williams as backup, or 3rd stringer Zach Evans last year when he was at Ole Miss.
What are you? What's like your college football pulse right now? What are your takes?
What are my takes? My takes are that Michigan's legit. Okay, I mean, this is the big year for Michigan. They're number 2 right now. I know people think Georgia's vulnerable. Georgia's Georgia. I mean, they'll be fine. There's a reason why they're the top team in the country. I feel like the team I've seen the most is Colorado.
Yeah.
I mean, they're exciting. But man, Oregon.
So Deshaun Jackson was there last week.
So was LaShawn McCoy. So was Emmanuel Acho.
Was he?
Yes.
Your boy.
And they took a picture with.
So was Giannis, I believe.
Yes. But do you know who they took a picture with? Let's see how well you know your Colorado coaching staff. This was a guy who was on the Eagles coaching staff during that.
He was on the
time.
Eagles coaching staff during that time.
Mm-hmm. And he's kind of like a consultant. I don't even want to say consultant. You know, he's one of those like offensive senior assistant.
Marty?
Types. Nope, but close.
Brad Childress.
Nope, someone who has a good palate for steak in Philadelphia.
Shermer.
Pat Shermer.
Really?
Yes.
Wow, your old dinner buddy.
Yeah, Pat Shermer.
That's a really funny picture.
He's on the Colorado staff, and he took a picture with Emmanuel Acho, Deshaun Jackson, and LaShawn
That's so
McCoy.
funny. Can you imagine two people with more opposite, like, dynamic personalities than Deion Sanders and Pat Shermer?
I mean, Deion's put a good staff together there. But, of course, at Colorado, I've seen them quite a bit.
I saw him mentioned as, like, a Michigan State possibility.
Yeah, I wrote it like that as a possibility, like 3 hires ago at Michigan State. So I think that's one of those things where Pat Shermer gets floated around. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've probably written like and asked Pat Shermer about that. Well, we have a minute here, and you collect your thoughts. I want to tell us about our friends at FOCO, because if you look behind me, we have some great stuff in this studio, and it's from FOCO. FOCO is a leading manufacturer of sports and entertainment merchandise. They have a product line that includes apparel, accessories, toys, collectibles, novelty items, and more. It's the best officially licensed gear for all sports and fandoms. It's football and tailgating season, and it's also tailgating season for baseball as well.
Amen.
You can find overalls, hoodies, hats, sunglasses, bags, everything you need for a game. FOCO has hooked PHLY up, like I said. FOCO always has our back for Philly sports, and they have yours too. Get the best gear around by using the link in our description. For all non-presale items, use the promo code PHLY for 10% off.
So what else are we sort of looking forward to seeing happen over the course of this week, Zach? I know injury-wise, we want to see if Sidney Brown and Justin Evans are back.
Yep.
Anything else?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think Quez Watkins is going to be important to monitor also because, like we said yesterday, Britton Covey in the concussion protocol, and so they're already down a wide receiver. They're going to need numbers there, and certainly the fact that Quez returned to practice last week on a limited basis makes you think he's on the right path there. But you want to see kind of punt return possibilities, I would imagine. Alameda Zacchaeus, Michael Clay didn't offer much detail on that, says he doesn't kind of want to give the answers to the test. I'm curious if Jalen Hurts has an injury now that you and Baldy think so. I mean,
you know what's he said it sort of the way that I was thinking about it, and I hadn't had a chance to express it that well. But his ability to sort of turn the corner when he is scrambling there and beat a guy to the edge and then get upfield, that does feel like sort of what is missing.
So I'm going to ask Jalen not about the injury, but I'll ask because I know what Jalen's going to say.
Right.
He's been asked after games before, right, about the hits he's taken. But I'm going to ask him about the running, right? If he feels that he's running less or not running as
part of, and I said this before, but part of what is so on my radar is that it just feels so different than the way that he's wired, the way that he is playing in the open field. But
yeah,
I don't know. I think it probably is an organizational emphasis also.
The Aaron Donald thing is obviously going to be a storyline here, and it's always interesting to hear Jason Kelce, his perspective on that matchup. Like I said, I remember 2017, 2018. Well, they played him in week 2 or week 3 of the 2020 season, but the COVID year, we weren't in the locker room. You don't get the same level of insight for that type of matchup. So those are some things. I did want to ask you this because this has been in the news, and I referenced the Eagles being
the malaria vaccine. Very exciting.
I was not going there.
Oh.
Okay. I referenced the Eagles having some numbers issues at wide receiver. It's been pretty clear if you read our company's coverage out in Chicago, CHGO, that Chase Claypool is going to be on the move.
It's interesting. We were talking about this on the outside before you got in today.
Oh, we're okay.
Yeah.
He's a free agent at the end of the year. Eagles fans know him well from that game-clinching touchdown
the
with
Nate Gary
in
game.
coverage. is this? I can't imagine it's going to cost much.
God, what a bad trade that was.
Is this
man.
The 33rd
From the
pick,
second they made it, it was a
or
terrible
32nd
trade.
pick actually, because Miami lost the draft.
Awful.
Yeah, they were bidding against Green Bay. Would you go after him if you were Howie? Just taking a chance. They don't have a lot of size as it is.
I mean, it feels like this is a guy who wants the ball, right? And is cantankerous because he's not getting the ball. He's not going to get the ball. He's going to get, even if he were the third receiver on this team, which I don't think that he would walk into, he'd get like at most 3 targets a game. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, if we're talking like flipping 7th round picks, nobody else wants him, maybe you take a shot. But the dynamics in that room and like the target share is already a little bit fraught, I think, for the Eagles. So I am not adding somebody who is coming in demanding the ball.
I feel like he's going to end up in Kansas City and he's going to be awesome there.
Yeah,
right?
It does sort of feel inevitable.
I mean, not to say Kadarius Toney is awesome, but like, Kadarius Toney just ends up there and is so much better than what he was with the Giants. Speaking of that, you didn't see that game last night.
I saw a little bit of it.
Okay.
But
man,
not a surprise. The Giants stink.
Yeah, that team's a concern right now.
Yeah, and their schedule's not. I mean, Daniel Jones he's not good. He's never been good.
It's the interesting thing is like there was 5-month sample size last year, 4-month sample size of them being like well coached, playing games to their pace, getting these like ugly games, getting those early leads. I vividly remember watching the game that they were in. They were playing in London last year, and like they had this big upset, and they played the game on their terms. The way they play in first halves this year, it's just crazy, number one. And yeah, Daniel Jones isn't looking good, but it's more that offensive line. I mean, Andrew Thomas didn't play last night, but when you look at the division, I know going into the year, we were talking about the Giants being potentially a tough out. Jeez, the Giants could be in the Caleb Williams sweepstakes for all we know.
No, there you go. I like that. Yeah, I mean, I think that part sort of speaks to the fallacy of like they're a well-coached team winning close games. Like that's just not a sustainable thing.
Yes.
But yeah, I think that team is in real trouble. Any thoughts on having rewatched the game at all? Anything that sort of popped to you?
It was mostly the things that we talked about. I thought they did get good pressure on Sam Howell, and Sean Desai actually addressed this today. I thought the big thing that we probably didn't give enough credit or attention to in yesterday's show was like the scoring drives that were extended with 3rd down penalties. Because
that's why I'm a little bit not as concerned about the defense, because there were so many plays like that extended drives.
And I asked Sean Desai about it, and he said today, like, you can't take those away, but if you just look at like the drive chart,
right,
that led to 17 points. Those other drives, they weren't really giving up, points. Like, so, it's the way the penalties shifted the game defensively in particular. I think about the 2 3rd down penalties that those jumped out when I was rewatching it. But the other thing, I probably say this every time I go back and watch a game, but Reed Blankenship's a really good player.
He's a really good player. And the flip side to that is he's being put in some difficult positions because Terrell Edmonds is right now not a very good player.
Yes.
I think the Eagles are sort of urgent to get Justin Evans back into the lineup and maybe even Sidney Brown ahead of Terrell Edmonds. I thought Darius Slay played his worst game of the season, and he went out with that injury. Yeah. It seemed like after the injury he was not quite the same player. I will say, like, the linebackers look pretty good.
Nicholas Morrow, yeah.
And they look all right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they're like average, which is about as good as you could expect from the Eagles right now. Now, Nakobe Dean can come back in 2 weeks?
Next week.
Right, next week.
Yes.
And your expectation is that he will?
When I don't want to say I'm expecting him to be back, but from what I understand, and I see him in the locker room, he is progressing. So he's kind of on the schedule that he thought. So I do think it's a realistic possibility.
Okay, great.
I know you said we'll do the trade bracketology next week, but I need to float a name. And it's the name I floated all summer.
Jeremy Chin?
Jeremy Chin. Jeremy Chin is the guy who I think makes a lot of sense. Carolina's floundering. They're going to want draft picks, right? Because they don't have a first rounder. I mean, it's not going to take a first rounder, but they're going to want volume, I imagine. He's a free agent at the end of the year. I think that's the player I would target.
Jeremy Chin for Quez Watkins and a 6th. Who says no?
Who says no?
Because there's the scuttlebutt. There's the scuttlebutt that the Panthers want to add some wide receiver help.
Yeah, but do you want to add a receiver on an expiring deal? Like, who would say no?
You think that's not enough?
No, I think that's probably a fair deal, honestly. I mean, maybe I'm underselling the Jeremy Chin market, but you're getting him for a half a season. Although last season the Ravens gave up a lot for half a season of Roquan Smith. The Eagles have given up a lot for half a season of Golden Tate and Robert Quinn. But no, I think I see Colin in the chat says Carolina says no. Maybe that pick has to be like a 5th, but I would pay close attention to Jeremy Chin.
Okay, well there you go. Man's been calling his shot for a long time, so hopefully that happens and you can take a victory lap. And I can say Zach was right.
I wouldn't take a victory lap. I would just act like I've been there before.
Lift that arm up and take a whiff.
I would act like I've been there before because I have. So,
I mean, you've also been other places before, like Hong Kong. So for Zach and Bree and Elijah, I'm Bo. We thank you for listening. We will talk to you on Thursday at 11, I believe.
Yep.
We'll talk to you then. Stay tuned. Enjoy the Phillies game tonight. Watch the post-game show with Jamie and Renee. And as always, we love you.
We all silly like the mayor.